Civilization has a fatal habit of confusing sophistication with stone walls. We assume that if a culture does not build cities, it does not understand engineering. For centuries, Western chroniclers described the Mongol arrival as a natural disaster, a scourge of God, a chaotic, screaming flood of barbarians that overwhelmed the disciplined armies of Europe and Asia through sheer, mindless savagery. They painted a picture of a swarm. This is a lie. If you strip away the fear and look at the forensic data, the Mongol army was the furthest thing from a swarm. It was a silence. A European battlefield is a cacophony of shouting commanders and blaring horns. The Mongol line was terrifyingly quiet. Orders were transmitted via black and white signal flags by day and whistling arrows by night. It was not a mob. It was a circuit board. Observe the grid. 10 men to an Arban, 10 Arbans to a Zun, 10 Zuns to a Mingan. This is not a tribe. It is a decimal system made of flesh and iron. A modular architecture designed for one specific output: total war. Amateurs talk about tactics. Professionals talk about logistics. By all laws of military science, the Mongol army should have starved to death before it ever reached the walls of Beijing or Kiev. A traditional army is a tethered beast. It drags a long, vulnerable tail of supply wagons, food, fodder, blacksmiths. Cut the tail, and the beast dies. The Mongol Tumans severed the tether. They did not carry supplies, they rode them. Each warrior maintained a string of 3 to 5 horses, rotating them to ensure fresh mounts. They drank the blood and milk of their mares. They ate the cured meat processed under their saddles. Look at the map of the Eurasian Steppe. It is an ocean of grass. To a Roman legion, this terrain is a death sentence. To the Mongol, it is a gas station. The fuel for their war machine was beneath their feet. Velocity is the most dangerous variable in warfare. A medieval European army moves at the speed of an ox cart, perhaps 10 miles a day. Information travels at the same speed. This creates a predictable strategic rhythm. You have weeks to prepare for a siege. But the Mongols traveled at 100 miles a day. They moved faster than the news of their arrival. They weaponized time. They would appear at the gates of a city while the enemy king was still reading the report that they were a month away. This wasn't just speed. It was a psychological flashbang. It induced a state of command shock, where the enemy leadership collapsed because their decision-making loop was slower than the reality on the ground. To understand the Mongol conquest, you must stop looking at the rider and look at the machine in his hands. In the 13th century, military technology was defined by the limit of materials. The English longbow, famous for its lethality, is essentially a stick. It is a single piece of yew wood. Its power is limited by the natural elasticity of that single grain. If you pull it too far, the wood remembers its limit and it snaps. The Mongol bow is not a stick. It is a laminate composite, a biomechanical battery. X-ray analysis reveals the genius of the construction. The core is wood, but it does no work. The belly, facing the archer, is lined with water buffalo horn. Horn is a material that loves to be compressed. It resists being crushed. The back, facing the enemy, is layered with animal sinew. Sinew behaves like a rubber band. It wants to snap back when stretched. This creates a push-pull physics engine. When drawn, the horn pushes out, while the sinew pulls in. The result is a weapon that stores 80% more potential energy than a wooden bow of the same size. The crucial design element is the recurve. When unstrung, a Mongol bow actually curls forward, forming a C shape in the opposite direction. Stringing the bow requires wrestling the limbs backward, against their will. This means the weapon is under massive tension before the archer even touches the string. It is preloaded. Kinetic efficiency. A Mongol bow with a draw weight of 160 pounds shoots an arrow faster, flatter, and harder than a European bow of the same weight. It delivers terminal ballistics capable of punching through riveted chainmail at 150 yards. But power is useless without control. The interface between the man and the machine was distinct. The Mediterranean draw. This creates drag and oscillation upon release. The arrow wobbles. The Mongol used the thumb. Protected by a thick ring of jade, bone, or leather, the thumb hooks the string, locked in place by the index finger. This is the Mongol lock. It functions mechanically like the sear on a modern sniper rifle. When the thumb opens, the string is released instantly, with zero friction. Cleaner release, higher velocity, and crucially, it allowed the arrow to be placed on the right side of the bow, enabling rapid reloading while galloping at 30 miles per hour. Pride is a structural weakness. The Mongol commanders understood that a knight's ego was as heavy as his armor. The maneuver is known as the feigned retreat. It is the most difficult tactical operation in warfare to execute without disintegrating your own force. To the European eye, it looked like a rout. The Mongol line would break. They would drop their packs, scatter their treasure, and flee in panic. This was theater, a carefully choreographed performance designed to trigger the enemy's predator instinct. Seeing the backs of the Mongols, the heavy cavalry would break their formation. The tight, disciplined wall of knights dissolved into a chaotic foot race, each man eager to claim the glory of the kill. Watch the formation integrity. The European army stretches out like a rubber band, losing all cohesion. The heavy cavalry outpaces the infantry. The infantry outpaces the archers. The system is no longer a unit. It is a line of individuals. You are never more vulnerable than when you think you have won. At full gallop, retreating at 30 miles per hour, the Mongol rider performs a feat of gymnastics that defies physics. He rotates his torso 180 degrees backward. This is the Parthian shot. It is a geometric nightmare for the pursuer. The European knight is riding into the arrow. His own forward velocity is added to the velocity of the incoming projectile. He is essentially impaling himself on a missile that he is chasing. The chasers are stripped of their horses, tumbling into the dust, creating an obstacle course of dead meat for the men behind them. The trap snaps shut. In an instant, the retreating liquid hardens into solid iron. The Mongols wheel around. The fresh horses of the reserve wings sweep in from the flanks. The enemy, strung out and exhausted, is no longer fighting an army. They are inside a killing box. Encirclement is absolute. The geometry changes from a line to a circle. The enemy is compressed. They are packed so tightly they cannot swing their swords. It is not a battle anymore. It is industrial processing. System failure is total. An empire is not defined by how much land it can conquer. It is defined by how fast it can talk to itself. The true genius of the Khan was not the bow, it was the yam. Visualize a neural network stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Danube River. Every 25 miles, a relay station. Fresh horses, food, shelter. A rider wearing the paisa, the golden passport of the Khan, could ride until his horse collapsed, swap mounts in seconds, and ride again. They achieved an information velocity of 200 miles per day. In a world where news traveled at the speed of a walking man, the Mongols were operating with fiber optics. They knew the enemy's movements before the enemy knew their own. They didn't just conquer space. They conquered the latency of command. The grass has long since grown back over the bones at Kiev and Baghdad. The cities have been rebuilt. The arrows have rotted into dust. But the forensic evidence remains. In the most permanent archive of all, the human genome. Statistical analysis suggests that 0.5% of the male population on Earth today carries the direct genetic lineage of the Great Khan. That is 16 million men. It is a haunting reminder that while civilizations rise on poetry and philosophy, they fall on mathematics and physics. The Mongol Empire proved that the world does not belong to the righteous. It belongs to the disciplined. We have dissected the mechanics. Now, I turn the command over to you. Place yourself in the saddle of a European king in 1241. You see the dust cloud on the horizon. The math is absolute. If you stay behind your walls, they starve you out. If you ride out to meet them, they flank you and erase you. So, what is your move? Do you surrender and kneel to save your people? Or do you die standing for a lost cause? I want your strategic solution in the comments below. Next, we dismantle the Roman legion. Subscribe. Do not miss the next autopsy. Class is dismissed.